Pressure test your own pool and save big. Today we want to show you how you can pressure test your own pool and achieve and understand the results like a professional. This mock filtering system will help you to understand how the system works and how a pressure test can show you if a plumbing line is or is not leaking. Let's talk a little about a basic filtering system and how it functions. This basic system has a pump, filter, skimmer, main drain, and 2 returns and 4 valves. All pool companies have their own way of arranging a plumbing system. Your pool could have more or less returns, skimmers, drains, and valves. Some systems may have no valves at all. This could alter the pressure test and access points of your pressure test. With the filter system running under normal conditions, water is drawn in by suction created by the pump from the main drain and from the skimmer. Water, now under pressure, flows from the pump into the filter. Then clean water, under pressure, flows from the filter through the return pipes and back to the pool. This is how this basic system would function under normal conditions. Here is a pressure test kit that has evolved from over 40 years of pressure testing swimming pools. This kit has a simple yet durable design, constructed of brass fittings and a liquid-filled gauge. It has the ability to test in tight spaces that other kits can't. Let's talk a little bit about this kit's components, starting with the pressure gauge. The gauge in this kit is a 0 to 30 psi liquid-filled, making it one of the smoothest operating gauges possible. It's able to withstand a corrosive environment without failing. Even totally submersing it in water will not affect this gauge. The main ball valve that controls the pressure test is constructed of brass with a stainless ball. The relief valve allows you to quickly release any pressure after testing, making it safe to remove the plugs. The 6 feet of flexible polyurethane hose stays flexible even in cooler temperatures, with the addition of compression hose fittings making leaks in the connections virtually impossible. This kit comes with 4 plug sizes 8 through 11, which works on all 1.5 to 2 inch pipes and fittings. The plugs have a stainless steel and brass construction with a hose compression fitting to make changing plugs easier. The kit also comes with an adapter that gives you the option of testing with air or water. It is fully constructed of brass and has a quick disconnect, making it easy to use. Here are the 4 most common ways your skimmer could be plumbed. Pressure testing skimmers 1 through 3 is going to be the most straightforward and simple. Even though skimmers 1 through 3's plumbing is different, the main suction line from the skimmer to the pump remains the same. Also, the pressure test of the skimmer line will remain identical. This is the most common way a skimmer will be plumbed, especially on a vinyl liner pool. Photo number 2 shows a skimmer with an equalizer plumbed to the second port. This is most commonly found on concrete and gunite pools. Photo number 3 shows a skimmer with the main drain plumbed into the second port. Let's get started with isolating and testing the skimmer line. When testing a skimmer line, the test can be done from the pump to the skimmer or from the skimmer to the pump. Here is a demonstration of what an actual pressure test would look like using our mock filtering system. We believe testing with air works best overall and advise using air to test whenever possible. In the next step, we will be using a homemade adapter to test from the skimmer back to the pump. Later in the video, we will show you how to make this adapter. Using both thread tape and clear silicone sealant on any threaded fittings is advised. I'm sure there are many opinions on how to apply thread tape and how much. Just use a fair amount, like 5 or 6 wraps, then coat the threads with a clear silicone sealant. Thread the adapter into the port that leads back to the pump. Be careful not to cross-thread. It should screw in easy for several turns before it begins to tighten up. Tools may or may not be necessary. Tightening by hand should be enough. An advantage to using the extension adapter in the skimmer is if the pool is full, you will be able to blow out the excess water to create airspace in the pipe. The height of the extension adapter makes it so water can't run back in. This is a really good advantage if you are working by yourself. Making the adapter taller than the skimmer lid will make it much easier to install and remove. To start the pressure test, you are going to put the plug in the pipe, making sure the black rubber is flush or past the top of the pipe. Using a 1/2-inch wrench, tighten the nut on the plug to make it expand in the pipe. Tighten the plug until it feels secure in the pipe. Visually, the rubber will expand over the washer as shown in the video. If your air compressor does not have a regulator, we recommend installing one. This is so you don't overpressure the 30-pound gauge on the test kit. Overpressuring the gauge could cause damage. Adding an inexpensive regulator with fittings can be done for under $20 from retailers like Harbor Freight or possibly Amazon. Simply plug your test kit into your air supply. At this point, if your pool has valves, close everything but leave the skimmer valve open to be able to remove excess water and create airspace in the pipe. Now close the relief valve and open the main valve slowly. Water should begin flowing from the top of the pump. Continue with the air until the water flow stops. Now close the skimmer valve. If there are no valves, you will have to put a rubber plug in the pump to allow you to trap air in the line. Slowly open the main valve until the pressure reaches around 10 psi. Now close the main valve to trap the air. Now is a good time to explain exactly what a pressure test is. At this point, the pressure reading on the gauge is the amount trapped between the gauge and the skimmer valve. If any air leaks out between those 2 points, the pressure reading will drop, indicating a leak. It's as simple as the gauge is monitoring the air pressure trapped between the 2 points. If there is no leak, the gauge will hold at the set pressure when the main valve was closed. If there is noticeable water loss or air in the system, generally 1 to 2 minutes will be enough time to determine if the pipe is or is not leaking. After each test, always remember to release the test pressure by opening the relief valve, ensuring the gauge is at 0 before loosening or removing any plugs. In a case where it is necessary to test from the pump end, the procedure is exactly the same, except a plug will be needed in the extension adapter at the skimmer. The skimmer valve also has to remain open. Changing the test plug to a different size may be necessary depending on your pump and plumbing. The installation of the test plug will be the same. The depth of the rubber should always be even or beyond the edge of the pipe or fitting. The main thing to keep in mind is you need to be able to access the expansion nut. The installation of the test plug should look like this, with the black rubber flush or beyond the end of the fitting. Before starting the test, make sure the skimmer valve is open. Now close the relief valve and slowly open the main valve to remove any excess water in the pipe to create airspace. Continue until the water stops. Now shut the main valve off and install a plug in the extension adapter at the skimmer. Anytime you are using rubber plugs, the rubber should be flush or beyond the edge of the pipe or fitting. Slowly open the main valve until the pressure reaches at least 10 psi. Then close the valve and watch the gauge. It is very important to understand exactly what this test is showing you. The pressure showing on the gauge is the exact amount trapped in the pipe between the gauge and the plug in the extension adapter at the skimmer. If the gauge holds the set pressure, the pipe is not leaking. If the gauge drops, there is a leak between the 2 points. If the gauge indicates a leak, you should first check the extension adapter for leaks. If there is water in the bottom of the skimmer, you will see bubbles around the threads. Also, this may be a good time to spray a soapy water solution on any unions, valves, and fittings at the pump to check for leaks. If no visual leaks are found, it is possible that a leaky valve is allowing the test pressure to escape into another plumbing line. Set the regulator on your air supply to 10 psi. Leave the main valve on the tester open while watching the other fixtures such as skimmers and drains for bubbles. If bubbles appear, further measures will need to be taken to complete the pressure test. This animated drawing shows what a pressure test would look like on a system with 3 valves, 2 skimmers, and a main drain. A second extension adapter will be needed. If while testing the skimmer, bubbles appear from another suction line, such as a second skimmer, you could simply plug and test both skimmers at the same time. This will also require a second extension adapter. If bubbles appear from the main drain and the pool is full, it may be possible to plug the main drain from the pump end, or some valves can be taken apart and repaired. We recommend testing the main drain last only if no other leaks are found, because it involves diving down, removing the cover, and putting a plug in the line. This type of valve can be disassembled and repaired by installing new O-rings, or it may be possible to install a rubber plug inside the valve to complete the test of the other suction lines. Replacing the O-rings is fairly simple. The square O-ring in the photo will cause air to leak beyond the valve into other suction lines. This O-ring can be easily replaced by removing the two screws on the opposite side. After removing the screws, you can now remove the plate holding the O-ring in place. Now you can remove the old O-ring and replace it with a new one. These are the O-rings that would need replaced if bubbles appeared when doing the soapy water test earlier in the video. Installing the plug here will stop the air from leaking past the valve. Now with this plug in place, you will be able to move forward and test your other suction lines. Make sure the relief valve is closed and the regulator is set at 10 to 30 psi. Open the main valve slowly until the gauge reads at least 10 psi. Check again for 1 to 2 minutes. Always release the pressure before loosening or removing any plugs. To make the plug easier to tighten and loosen in tight spaces, you can remove the wing nut and replace it with a hex nut. This style plug normally would need a 1/4-20 nut. Now let's talk about pressure testing the return side of the filtering system. Always think about the easiest way to create airspace in the pipe. If the water level is above the return outlets, we suggest testing from the pool. If the water level is below the return outlets, testing can be done from either end. If you are testing with water, having the water level below the returns will give you a head start on creating airspace. When testing with air, the water level being down allows you to blow out the water in either direction. Some systems will have unions making access for testing easier. In some cases, it may be necessary to cut the pipe to create an access point. When choosing a location for the cut, make sure there is enough space for the fittings you will be using to reconnect the pipe. The spot we chose here will allow us to easily reconnect the pipe by using a coupling. Getting a straight cut is important. In this clip we are using 2 hose clamps as a guide to get the straightest cut possible. The spot we chose on this end will allow us to use a union, giving us a future access point. When making the second cut, just repeat the same process as the first. Remember to pick a location with enough room for the fittings to reconnect the pipe. When testing with rubber plugs, they seal off best when installed on a smooth, flat surface. To avoid installing the plug in the pipe thread of our return fitting, we will be using a simple 1.5" male adapter. It's always a good idea to use thread tape and silicone to seal the threads. Always avoid over-tightening, only tighten enough to stop leaking in the threads. Sometimes it will be possible to tighten it enough by hand, but not always. Tools may be necessary in some cases. Again, anytime you install a rubber plug, make sure it is even or beyond the end of the pipe or fitting. Tighten the plug until it is secure. You will see the rubber expand over the edge of the washer. If your pool has valves like our mock filtering system, make sure to open the valve for the line you are testing and close any that are not being tested. Now close the relief valve on the pressure tester and open the main valve slowly to blow out the excess water to create airspace. If your system has valves, close the one on the line you are testing, or install a plug to seal off that line. Open the main valve slowly until the pressure gauge reads at least 10 psi. Normally, 1 to 2 minutes of testing will be enough to determine if the line is leaking or not. Make sure to open the relief valve on the tester to release the pressure before removing any plugs. Make sure the test gauge reads 0. If the water level is below the return lines and you decide to test from the filter end, this clip will show how that could work. There is always going to be different ways to accomplish the same test. This makes it nearly impossible to cover every issue in one video, but our goal with this is to show you how a pressure test could look, so you can understand how the test works and apply what you learned from this video to your plumbing system and get better results. When installing the test plug, make sure it is beyond or flush with the end of the pipe or fitting it's being installed into. Tighten it until it is secure. The rubber will start to expand over the washer. This is how the plug will look after installation. We have seen videos online that say that tapered rubber plugs cannot be used for pressure testing, but if you are watching this video, you can see that that statement is false. Low pressure testing at 10 to 15 psi can definitely be done with tapered plugs. Testing with this kit can be done at up to 30 psi with threaded plastic plugs, but is usually not necessary. Make sure the relief valve is closed and the valve for the line you are testing is open. Slowly open the main valve on the tester to remove any excess water in the line to create airspace. After getting as much of the water out as possible, you can plug the line. In this clip we are plugging the return without an adapter. This is another option. In order to have the most success doing it this way, you have to make sure the plug is in as far as you can get it beyond the threaded part of the fitting. Make sure the relief valve on the tester is closed. Then slowly open the main valve till the pressure reaches at least 10 psi. Again, you will generally only need to test for 1 to 2 minutes to determine if the pipe is leaking or not. The reason why we say 1 to 2 minutes is enough time to pressure test is because if you are doing this test, most likely your pool is losing a significant amount of water or has a lot of air issues. This should show up very quickly with a pressure test. Always open the relief valve before removing any plugs, ensuring the gauge is on 0. Make your pressure test easier by planning to test lines that use the same sized plug. This will prevent the need to change the plug repeatedly. Our plugs now attach with a compression fitting. This virtually eliminates the possibility of leaks. 2 wrenches are required to change the plug. Loosen the compression nut until the nut will slide freely back on the hose. Remove the hose from the plug by pulling and twisting. All the compression nuts are the same size, so just leave the nut on the hose and remove the nut from the plug to be used. Push the hose onto the plug, then reinstall the compression nut. It will require quite a few turns of the compression nut to get it down the hose and onto the plug fitting. Then just tighten the compression fitting with the 2 wrenches and you are ready to resume testing. In cool conditions and sometimes when the plug has been on there for a long time, it may be difficult to remove. The simple use of heat from a hairdryer can make the change easier. If the hose becomes frayed or damaged on the end, you can simply cut a small piece off and install the plug. Here are some helpful tips not covered in the video. Here's how to reinstall the pipe we cut earlier in the video to create our access point for testing. We chose to use a coupling and a union. The union will allow us to have future access without cutting this pipe. Adding a union will require cutting off a small section of pipe to make room for the union. The union we used would need 5/8 of an inch removed. In this photo, we have marked the area you would have to measure to determine how much pipe you would need to trim. This is what the pipe looks like reinstalled with a coupling and a union. Make sure to clean all pipes and fittings before gluing. If you choose to use threaded plugs, the first two plugs marked with red X's are not for pressure. The plug marked with the green check is the style you should use. The others will be very hard to make seal. Before purchasing the male adapter fittings to make the extension adapter shown earlier in this video, you will need to determine what size port you have. 1.5 inch thread will measure about 1 3/4 inches. The 2-inch threads will measure about 2 3/8 of an inch. The 1.5 inch or 2-inch male adapters and the short pieces of pipe can be bought at Home Depot or Lowe's. Simply clean and glue the male adapter onto the pipe to create the adapter used in the video. You can use the male adapter by itself to avoid putting plugs in the threaded area of the return for a better seal. This is how it should look when glued together. Having it extend out of the top of the skimmer will make it easier to install and remove. If you have directional eyeball type fittings, they will need to be removed in order to do a pressure test. There are 3 parts that make up this fitting and all pieces have to be removed. Sometimes these fittings will come out in one piece, other times just the front 2 pieces will come off. The back part also must be removed. The back portion will have 2 slotted grooves in it that a tool can be inserted into, and then the fitting can be threaded out. An inexpensive plastic version of this tool can be purchased on Amazon. Some gunite pools may have a different version of this fitting that is just pressed in place. Some may also be glued in. The best way to tell if you have this style is there will not be any slotted grooves inside for this tool. You will have to determine if they are just pressed in place or glued. Once you have removed the back part of the fitting, your return is ready to test. Another common wall fitting that will have to be removed is the quick disconnect for a pool cleaner. Simply unthread and you are ready to test. When testing with water, disconnect both ends of the supply hose and elevate to drain out the water. Then reconnect to the tester and to the water supply. Then turn on the water supply and introduce as much of the air created by draining the supply hose into the plumbing line to be tested. Drawing A shows a pipe with a single outlet. A pressure test is plugging the outlet and introducing air or water from a pressure tester at a pressure of at least 10 psi, then monitoring the gauge. Testing drawing B is exactly the same but with 2 outlets. If the pressure drops, there is a leak between the tester and the plug or plugs in the end of the pipe. If the pressure holds at the 10 psi, there is no leak. Using the tester with air or water can determine what each line is by introducing pressure and watching returns, skimmers, and main drains for bubbles. I'm sure there are plenty of different opinions on how to complete a pressure test. In this video, we are just showing you what works best for us after 40+ years of searching for leaks in swimming pools. We created this video because we watched many YouTube videos on pressure testing and found them to be not as informative as they should be. For anyone experiencing test plugs popping out, this can easily be solved by, first be sure you are creating enough airspace in the pipe. Water does not compress, that is why the air is important. Also be sure you are installing the plugs as shown earlier in the video. Next, slick surfaces of pipe fittings and or plugs may also cause popping out. Simply sanding the surface of the plug with 100 grit sandpaper will rough the plug up enough to make it grab and stay in place. Pipe and fittings can sometimes be slick due to oils or algae. This can be solved by sanding with a piece of Scotch-Brite, which will work even when wet. Never use steel wool in or around the pool. Doing so will lead to many rust spots. Our test kit comes with a piece of tape on the plug just to ensure the plug stays in during shipping. The tape can be removed. Be sure the rubber plug stays in place. If the gauge is not reading 0 when no pressure is applied, just hold the gauge upright and remove the plug for a couple seconds. This will make the gauge return to normal. Thanks for watching. Check out our website popspooltools.com to find our products and videos easier. There will be a link in the description.